Happy Monday to y'all. Welcome back to Common Knowledge, where I look at some common Magic the Gathering cards and see if any of them are worthy for play in the Pauper format. You know, I always feel a little bad. I would like to just be able to hit random here, but that can give you things like mythics. So we can't do that. So I had to make this like custom search to allow me to only get these cards, and then I can randomize the picks from that. So yeah, I always get these cards. I don't think we've actually talked about any of these cards that you see on this first screen. They haven't come up yet, and you know, when they come up randomly, we will talk about them. But Abjure is becoming really good right now with things like Cryogen Relic. But the one I really want to talk about is this. I want to talk about Happy Matron. Look at that! Just look at it. Not a good card. Not a good card. This one doesn't count, by the way. But man, they need to make more Magic cards like this. Forget Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles. I want more Abby Matrons. Anyway, I guess we should really get started. We'll start with Funeral Pyre. It's a single white mana for an instant. Exile target card from a graveyard. Its owner creates a 1/1 white spirit creature token with flying. It's not good, as you might imagine. I mean, it is still common, but common from Judgment, no less. Which, you know, there's some good Judgment cards. I think we've talked about. Wasn't Benevolent Bodyguard from Judgment too? So there are good Judgment cards out there, good Judgment commons. But this one, okay, Graveyard Hate's good in Pauper. We know this. We've been over this a number of times. So exiling a card from a graveyard at instant speed. You know, if somebody wants to use their Exhume or something, that's a good card to use against them. But it's not you get to create the spirit. I mean, you could if you got rid of your own card, but it's a little. I feel like these days, both of these things would go in your favor. That you would exile the card from a graveyard, which generally is probably going to be your opponent's graveyard. But then you would get this 1/1 white spirit creature token with flying instead of the owner of the card that gets exiled. So now, instead of them getting their Lotleth Giant, they get this 1/1 white spirit creature token with flying. And while a 1/1 flyer is not as good as what is Lotleth Giant, like a 6/6? Yeah, 6/6. I mean, it's nice that you get the body, but you're using it for the end of the battlefield trigger. So they don't get their big creature, but they get a flyer instead. And you know what? In Pauper, it's still good to get a 1/1 flyer. So it's not really that great. It is okay in that this is most of the time a 1/1 flyer that you with flash just on your side. That's not bad. Think about that. Think about that in a fairies deck. I think we've had Ilvoid Galeblade at this point. That's a flash 1/1. Now it's blue, but that's a flash 1/1 with flying. But the problem is this is a token. So when you try to ninjutsu it out with your ninja, it just goes away. So there's downsides at every turn for this card, but I still think it's kind of a cute little trick for a single mana. I think that's kind of fun. But I do wish it just said you get the token. If that was the case, I think I could give this a much better score. But that's not what it says. So we'll give it a 2. I don't know. It's been I know it hasn't really changed for you guys. The schedule has stayed the schedule, but I haven't recorded one of these for a handful of days, so I'm a little off on what my scores should be. Not that you should pay attention to the scores at all. Anyway, the scores, like whose line it is anyway, generally do not matter. But let's call it a 2, and let's keep moving on to Hex Gold Slash. I've got a number of copies of this card, because I like Phyrexia All Will Be One. I like Phyrexians. I think Phyrexians are pretty cool. Anyway, Hex Gold Slash is a single red mana for an instant. Lots of single mana instants here. Hex Gold Slash deals 2 damage to target creature. If that creature had Toxic, Hex Gold Slash deals 4 damage to that creature instead. Not going to be very good. Pretty specific on its needs here. 2 damage to any creature is not great. I mean, you're casting shock here, but shock has the ability to do two damage to anything. Somebody's face, a creature, if they were legal in Pauper, a planeswalker. This can only do it to a creature, and you should just play 4 shocks if you want to do that. And you shouldn't do that because you should just play 4 lightning bolts, which are 3 damage to any creature, player, or planeswalker. So Hexgold Slash already gets dinged a lot for that. Sure, it's nice that occasionally it can do 4 damage to a creature, but that is a very specific requirement. There are not a whole lot of toxic creatures in Pauper that get played. There are some, but not enough that you would build. I mean, they're not in the meta. They're not like meta defining creatures that are show up in, even a third of all the very playable decks. So you're not going to have the opportunity to really get 4 damage on this. So it ends up being just a pretty poor removal spell at the end of the day. And we will give it what a very poor removal spell deserves, which is, I don't know, 1.4. Not great. Let's keep it rolling to Gossamer Chains, which is 2 white mana pips. White, for an enchantment. It says return this enchantment to its owner's hand. Prevent all combat damage that would be dealt by target unblocked creature this turn. That's interesting. So playing the card does nothing. Which, I guess there are Magic cards that when you play them, they do nothing. But generally, when they're on the table, they do something. And this only does something when you return it from the table to your hand. Huh. That's just not something I remember seeing a whole lot in Magic cards. Maybe it was something that happened a little bit more in Visions. Visions was way before I started playing. So, I mean, I've seen a lot of Visions cards, but I don't remember more cards like this. So maybe it was just them testing out design space back then. But it's kind of interesting. Yeah. Like this just negates damage from a giant creature, and you get to keep on playing it. And what are they going to do? I mean, all they can do is counter it. And, a null's in the format, something like that can counter an enchantment. I guess they could try destroying this enchantment, but then what's the point? You just return it to your hand, and I guess it gets it out of the play space where then they could attack with the creature, but it makes them waste a lot of resources trying to do that. And if you're going up against a Bogle's deck or well, I guess it wouldn't work against a Bogle's deck because you still have to target the unblocked creature. So this is going to be better against a Tolarian Terror deck, and even then it's not all that great because at least the Terror has ward. Maybe this works against more of like a Dredge deck that is playing, the Generous Ents or the Trolls of Khazad-dûm, or even the Lotleth Giant. But again, the Lotleth Giant does most of its damage on the enter trigger, not so much from the damage that it does later as the big creature. That's interesting. I think the more I'm looking at it, the less I'm liking it. If this was just like hey, I mean, it can't just be a fog effect, right? I mean, it's a single target fog effect, but I wish it would just say prevent the next time a creature deals combat damage. I guess you can't do that. You'd still have to target it in some way. I'm sure there's a way to ride around it, but they certainly weren't thinking about it when they made this because, things like hexproof weren't around at this point. Things like hexproof, I guess, were, but hexproof itself was not a keyword at this point, and ward certainly was not a thing in Magic at this point either. This is a big roundabout way of saying that I don't think this card is actually all that good, but it's made me think a lot more than some of these other cards have, and for that, I kind of dig it. I kind of dig it a little bit. Now I'm thinking about like, could I play this in Commander? Would this be, forget that I can stop combat damage. That's nice. But if I'm in an Enchantress deck and I just want to keep replaying an enchantment, I could just keep playing this and bringing it back and playing it and bringing it back. That's kind of cool. Actually, you know what? I do have a couple of Enchantressy style decks, and 2 of them are in white. So I'm going to write this one down. Gossamer Chains. I mean, what? It's 13 cents? I think I can afford that. Probably still pretty inefficient in Commander as well, but it does seem like a fun get out of jail free card that you can just activate at certain points. But for Pauper, the score has to still be pretty low. Let's give this, I think it's better than the other cards we've seen so far today, though, so I'll give it a 2.4. And we'll move on to Sun's Bounty, which is 1 and a white. For an instant, you gain 4 life. Pretty clean. But then it also has Recover for its same mana cost, 1 and a white. And Recover says, when a creature is put into your graveyard from the battlefield, you may pay 1 and a white. If you do, return this card from your graveyard to your hand. Otherwise, exile this card. Cold Snap card. Cold Snap cards are weird. I was playing during Cold Snap. I remember people talking about Ice Age and Alliances, I think is the second one. So they were talking about, oh, it's kind of like it's a hidden third set from the block here, and bringing back things like cumulative upkeeps and snowlands and things like that. And that was cool. It was cool that was a thing. I just didn't have any specific love for those older cards at that point, because I was still pretty new to Magic at this point. And so I just saw a lot of cards that seemed pretty underpowered compared to some of the other sets that I played with. I started in Mirrodin. I went through the Champions of Kamigawa block, though, so I saw my fair share of underpowered cards. But, this is around Ravnica time, too, and Time Spiral and things like that. And, I think a lot of these Cold Snap cards end up being a lot more disappointing. There's some good Cold Snap cards. A couple of my favorite cards are actually from Cold Snap. But generally it's not a powerful set, not known as a powerful set. And this card I don't think is known as a powerful card. Gaining 4 life at instant speed is not that great. At 2 mana, that also seems a little pricey. We have ways of gaining 4 life at 2 mana, at 1 and a white, in fact. It's, what is it, Devoted Cleric, Devoted Guardian, Devoted something. It comes down, it's a creature, and it gains you 4 life. But then it's also a creature. It blocks for you. It attacks. It does stuff. And this, has the ability to come back, but it also limits the player in a way that I don't love. We've had the mechanics of like flashback that, hey, this is in your graveyard. You get to play it whenever you feel like it. For a mana cost. And this says, well, it's kind of like flashback, but it's only flashback in a couple of very specific ways. One, a creature has to be put into my graveyard. So that means I already have to have a creature. I have to have it die in some way. Generally, the opponent gets more of an option on when my creatures die than I do, or if my creatures die. I guess I get to choose kind of which creature and when. But they get to choose, if a creature dies, I'm going to swing in, you need to block this, or I'm going to deal direct damage to this card, or I'm going to make you sacrifice a creature. And sometimes they will choose to kill your creature at inopportune times for you, because this card wants you to pay this mana when this happens. Because if you don't, you have to exile this card and you just completely lose it from your library. And that's a little rough. Because, you got to use it or lose it. And I think you're okay losing it for just 4 life on this. I don't think that's very good at all compared to, the myriad of food tokens and other things that you can do to gain life in Pauper. So this is probably not the card that you want to play. I am thinking, though, because there are a number of other cards with Recover in Cold Snap, and they're not all in white. I mean, I know there's some black ones as well. I think they might actually be across all the colors. And I do have a Insidious Roots style deck that's Abzan in Commander. And it's kind of interesting that here's a way of getting cards to exile themselves from your graveyard without paying anything. What if I just didn't pay the recover cost and just let this card exile itself from my graveyard? I think Insidious Roots wants creature cards, so I think there are some creatures with recover as well in Cold Snap, but that's neither here nor there. We're talking about Pauper here, and as a Pauper card, I think this is extremely disappointing, and I wouldn't play it, and I wouldn't tell you to play it. So let's give it... Oh boy, what do you give it? It's like maybe like a 1.5. It's really bad. Let's move on to Night Guard Patrol. I remember this guy too, because I played during Ravnica. 2/1 first strike vigilance, human soldier, and costs 2 and a white. He's not great. Like that's pretty expensive for this amount, but he's a pretty good blocker and a pretty good attacker. You know, he's first strike vigilance is I think an underrated combo. That's something that people don't really want to block, and they don't really want to attack into either. This guy would wear equipment really well, or auras really well. It already has these nice keywords on it, so any power or toughness boost you put on it, it's just gonna sing. That seems pretty solid. It's just a little expensive. If this was 2 mana, I think we'd have to seriously consider this as a card you might put in a Bogle's deck or something like that. But as it is, I think you just end up finding slightly better cards than this. Even more than slightly. 3 mana's a lot to ask for this effect. And I think you can get a little bit more than just a really solid French vanilla creature. You can do better than that at 3 mana these days. Maybe in Ravnica it was a little bit different, but yeah, not these days. Let's give this guy. Let's give him a 3. I think it's worth a 3. And next card is Mortis Dogs for 3 and a black. It is a 2/2 Phyrexian dog, no longer a hound. And whenever this creature attacks, it gets +2/+0 until end of turn. And when this creature dies, target player loses life equal to its power. Huh. That's kind of cool. It reminds me a little bit, and we'll come back to this card in a second, but it reminds me of Murk Dwellers, which is also 4 mana for a 2/2. And when it attacks, when it attacks and it doesn't get blocked, it gets +2/+0. So this is very much just a better card than Murk Dwellers. But maybe it is like an homage to Murk Dwellers. You know, this starts with MD, this starts with MD. Same mana cost, same power and toughness, similar type effect, but this is just better. It's whenever this creature attacks, so it doesn't even have to be unblocked. So it's as long as you're attacking with it, this is a 4/2. It's not too bad at all. And then just having the death trigger, whether an opponent kills this thing before it can attack, or even it blocks it and trades with it, then you're getting even more. But even if they try to just shock this or lightning bolt it, you still get to deal 2 damage to them. That's pretty nice. But if you make them block, then they can lose 4. That's even better. I think that's cool. It costs too much, for sure, and I still don't think it's all that powerful. But it's kind of cool. It's kind of cool. I even like the idea that you have the ability to sacrifice this thing to some kind of effect and deal that extra damage to your opponent. Maybe you even get in with combat damage on this guy and then you sacrifice it. So you deal the 4 damage of the combat and then you sacrifice it while it is still technically attacking in the combat phase, and they have to lose 4 more life. Is 8 damage for 4 mana a bad deal? Not really. That's actually a pretty good deal. That seems close to all right to me, but it is a bit of a trek to get there. And this guy's probably not quite worth it. He really should be a skeleton, right? Like, look at that. I know he's a Phyrexian dog, but Phyrexian dog skeleton, Anyway, I just kind of like this guy. I think he's kind of cool. I want to give him a decent score, even though he's not quite good. Let's give him a 2.8. That's probably better than he deserves, but I like him. Let's talk about Rites of Initiation. It's a single red mana for an instant. Discard any number of cards at random. Creatures you control get +1/+0 until the end of turn for each card discarded this way, originally from Odyssey. We've talked about how discarding cards can actually be a positive in some Pauper decks. That you have cards with Madness or Mayhem, or cards that you want to put into your graveyard because you care about how many cards are in your graveyard for Threshold or something like that, or just cards that have flashback that you don't mind being in your graveyard, or sneaky snackers that can come back out of your graveyard when you do other things. So the discarding thing isn't all that bad here. The discarding at random is a little tougher though, because unless all of your cards are discardable, then the randomness can just punish you in a way that you're probably not generally going to want. I think this is going to screw you over a few more times than it's going to help you, and that'll be very frustrating as well. It's a neat idea. It's a cool idea if you have some kind of mono red deck that is very aggressive, but you also have to have cards in your hand, and if you have cards in your hand in mono red, you're probably doing it wrong. Like, those cards should be on the table hitting your opponent for damage, and hopefully those cards would do a little bit more damage than just +1 across the board. Like, you'd want more substantial damage. I guess this does scale up in a way that if you discard 4 cards, each creature's getting +4/+0, and that is that exponential at that point? I don't know if that's exponential exactly, but it's a lot more damage. It's scaling up for sure. And it's interesting, but I don't see this working in mono red. Maybe it works a little bit better in Rakdos, where you're able to have some card draw of black. Maybe you do have a full hand for something like that. And also, Rakdos is a little bit better with the Madness cards. You get more Madness options in both red and black. So maybe you get more opportunities of using this. I think most players, myself included, are just generally going to see the word random and go, nope, not for me. I would rather not flip a coin at which cards I lose. And they just rather have something that's a little bit more, something they can have a little bit more confidence in. So Rites of Initiation, I think, can work and probably could give you some kind of false positives of, wow, I totally stole this game because I had 5 cards in my hand, and my opponent didn't block because they thought I couldn't deal enough damage, and then I put this on the table and I discarded all my cards and completely won. Isn't that great? Shouldn't I always have this card? And I think just those opportunities for you are going to be fewer and farther between, that more often than not, you're probably going to discard your best card to this that you didn't mean to discard, and then feel bad and then lose, and that's not going to work out so well. So, what do you give this? I'll give this a 3 as well. I think there's enough uses, and it can be strong, but more often than not, I think you should stay away from this one. Let's keep going. Did I mark that one down? Let's say I didn't mark that one. Let's say I did mark that one down, and maybe I'll get an extra out of here. Anyway, we've got Risky Research, which is a Spider-Man card, which I don't remember. And Spider-Man just happened. Like, why don't I remember this card? Maybe we'll find out. It is 2 and a black for a sorcery. So surveil 2, then draw 2 cards, and then you lose 2 life. It's pretty clean. Did we actually do this? Did we talk about this card before? I don't remember this art, but I remember us talking about an effect. Did we get this one instead? Did we get the Through the Omen Pass version? I don't think so. I don't think we did. But I remember having this conversation with you, because I remember pulling up Night's Whisper and Sign in Blood and just going, Night's Whisper does kind of the same thing, but does it better. Draw 2 cards, lose 2 life, but it's a whole mana less. And the Surveilling 2 is Surveilling 2 worth a whole mana to you? And I think generally it's not. Maybe this is a functional reprint of another card we saw on one of these. I'm not going to go back and look through all my episodes. If you remember that we've done this card, you can shout it out. But I'm just going to call a mulligan on this one and say we've done basically this card before. It's not that great. I think you would play Night's Whisper and Sign in Blood over this, and you generally wouldn't play those cards either in Pauper. So wouldn't worry about it. Let's just skip to the next card and keep going. Oh, yes. Portal 3 Kingdoms card. So 2 things. 1, it's not going to be very good. And 2, I'm going to love it. Anyway, doesn't matter how bad it is. And this one, not very good. It's 2 and a white for a 2/2 human soldier. And when it enters, you gain 2 life. We just talked about it earlier that there's cards, white cards, in fact, that cost 1 less mana and gain you 4 life instead of 2. And I think it has the same stat line. Maybe it's a 2/1, or maybe it's even a 1/2. I cannot remember. But the point is, you would play that card over this card any day of the week. 1, because it gives you more life. 2, because it costs less mana. And 3, because it probably costs less real money too. This is a pretty awful common from Portal 3 Kingdoms, and it still costs you 82 cents, almost $1 for a card that you're never going to want to play. And it's only because it's pretty rare to see these cards. While they did get printed in English, they didn't get printed in America, if I am correct. So getting these cards requires some kind of importing in some way, and it's a very old set at this point too, so it's not something you see. Man, I would love to tell you more stuff about 3 Kingdoms. It's one of my favorite books and eras and things to talk about. But not on Shoe Grain Caravan. That's probably not the right way to do it. I mean, you could bounce this, you could flicker this, you could do lots of things. You could just play it and gain the 2 life, but it's not efficient enough. It's not good enough. And outside of making me happy, this card's like a 1.1. Pretty bad. Next up, we've got Chub Toad. Hell yes! Look at this. We're getting so many good cards. Now, this is originally from Ice Age, and I said I wasn't playing during Ice Age, but I did get a bunch of cards from 5th edition when I started playing from my friend who gave me her entire collection when she went off to college. So I had Chub Toad. I love this art. Like, look at it. It's the arms hanging out of the Chub Toad's mouth. This thing's a dangerous guy. He's also a 1/1. Let's talk about him a little bit more. He is 2 and a green for a 1/1 frog. And when this creature blocks or becomes blocked, it gets +2/+2 until end of turn. It's got Bushido. It's got Bushido before Bushido was a thing. Bushido is not a very good effect. This is also not a very good effect by the transitive property on that one. And poor Chub Toad. I mean, on one hand, this is a 3/3 for 3. That's actually also pretty bad. That was me trying to be positive about the card, and I still think it's pretty bad. 3 mana for a 1/1 that can occasionally become a 3/3 is not good. Your opponent's just not going to block this at all and take the 1 damage. And if you try to block with it, great. I guess you paid 3 mana for a wall, more or less. Yeesh. Not good. The best thing about it's the art. They should really revamp Chub Toad in some way. We need a new Chub Toad. We need a Chub Toad, a legendary Chub Toad that can be your commander. That's what I want. Make this good. Find a way to make this good. Or also make like a Kamigawa version of Chub Toad and give it Bushido so it basically does what Chub Toad does, but it's a frog samurai. That'd be great too. They're not going to do that. They're not going to do that, nor should they. Chubtoad's bad, but we love Chubtoad, right? Like in a better world, we wouldn't have the Stormcrow memes. We would have Chubtoad memes. People would be saying Chubtoad was the best Magic the Gathering card ever, not Stormcrow. We don't live in that world. Chubtoad, you get a... God, is it worse than Shoe Grain Farmers? I would say in a lot of ways it is. I'm still going to give it a 1.1. I'm going to give it the same as the grain, the Shoe Grain Caravan. All right, is Underdark Basilisk going to be any better? Let's see. It's 1 and a green for a 1/2 Death Touch Basilisk. That's all it does. I love the art. I like basilisks in general. I think that's a cool creature type. We've gotten some cool ones over the course of Magic's history, but little death touchers like this, generally you're going to get your 1/1s with death touch, like your Ankle Biter or your Fang Shigekis, and those cost 1 green mana, and this is double that for 1 point of toughness. I don't think that's worth it. I don't think that's worth it at all. Sure, this has the ability to potentially block something and still live, whereas those 1/1 death touchers are kind of solely meant to trade. But more often than not, this is also just going to trade because there's not a ton of stuff that you're... I mean, there are plenty of 1/1s that you play with in Pauper, but I think you're just paying extra mana for an effect that will do just as well if you played Fang Shigeki, and also nobody really plays Fang Shigeki in Pauper, so I can't really justify this either. Let's give it a 1.6. No, that's still too high. Let's give this a 1.4. I feel like we've been given a lot of stuff around that score lately, so I feel kind of bad about that. We're moving on to our next one as soon as our internet decides to catch up. Any minute now. Still spinning. I know you can't see it. There we go. Awaken the Beast is 2 and a green for an instant. It says target creature gets... Target creature gets +3/+3 and gains trample until end of turn. Well, that's not very good either, is it? You get a giant growth and also trample, but you've got to pay 3 times as much mana for it. I don't think trample is worth 3 times the mana of a giant growth. I mean, it's a great ability. Don't get me wrong. Having trample can, make or break a combat step like that. But if this was 2 mana and said this, and we have cards that do that. We have, in fact, let me just make sure. Overprotect. Yeah, we have Overprotect that gives you +3/+3 trample, but also hexproof and indestructible until end of turn. Overprotect is a great card. It's also an uncommon, so you don't play it in Pauper. But Overprotect is a really good card. Awaken the Bear. Did I say Awaken the Beast before? It's Awaken the Bear. Awaken the Bear. I can't possibly justify that. I suppose it would have been interesting in Khans Tarkir because that had Ferocious. Was it called Ferocious? Was that the one I'm thinking of? Because then the next set after Khans was it Formidable? I don't remember. You can tell me. I think Ferocious is the one that you have to have 4 power on a creature before some kind of effect happens. So having a combat trick that's able to boost your creature's power, hopefully you have a creature with at least 1 power that you put this on, because then it would certainly become ferocious and it would give you the opportunities to use those kind of ferocious abilities. But when you're taking the whole of Pauper, this ability just costs too much and doesn't do enough, and that's a bad combination. That's a really tough combination to be a part of. We'll give this a 1.3. You just want a little bit more out of it. Is that our last card of the day? That is our last card of the day. You know what? We had we had a mulligan and we had the Abbey matron, so I think we don't really need a bonus card this time. Maybe we'll get a bonus card tomorrow, but that's up to Tuesday, so we'll see you then.